It's a great pleasure to be here and to address such a talented and distinguished group of people. I think you've made a wonderful choice, and the first order of the day should be to congratulate you on it. Everything our previous speakers have been saying about the wonderful and unique quality of this institution is absolutely true. You're going to be awfully pleased 3 years from now when you get your diploma. You're going to look back on it and say, boy, did I make the right call. It's an important moment for the law school. Dean Paul Mahoney, I've known for many, many years. He's going to make a great dean. He has good judgment, great energy, and a passionate devotion to the law and to this institution. So you're really lucky, I think, to be part of his first entering class. I went here to law school, graduated in '72, and I taught here off and on until 1984. And you're saying to yourself, well, that's a long time ago. What do you know about what's happening here? Well, I have my ways. 4 of my former law clerks are on the faculty. They'll report to me about you. Barbara Amakoss, Elizabeth McGill, Leslie Kendrick, Ruth Payne. I'm going to let you in on a little secret if you'll promise not to tell anybody. Each one of them had a much higher GPA than I did. But I'm supposed to be here to get an orientation speech, not a confessional. Catherine Toomey, standing in the back of the room, is my law clerk this year. And as Paul indicated, my daughter graduated just recently from this law school. And the law school never had a greater ambassador than Porter. I had dinner with her and her friends from the student body regularly, and they really loved this institution. And you know, there may be some people who have a tendency to look at law school as a means to an end. Say, well, this is all a way to just get me to start practicing, to begin to earn some money. This is a ticket to punch. That, of course, is a mistake. That's not how you're going to approach your lives. Life is way too short to look at one experience as a means to something else. Each thing has its intrinsic value, and that's nowhere so true as of this law school. It's simply a worthwhile experience in every sense, in and of itself. Legal education is a compact between faculty and students, and that's nowhere more true than at the University of Virginia. Its faculty is one of extraordinary quality, and it's sort of a bargain between faculty and students. The faculty has a very important part of its bargain to uphold. And believe you me, they'll uphold it. They take teaching very seriously. They assign students a priority. They will come to class, as you will, well prepared. They'll press you. You'll find them on top of the latest and most current trends in the field. And they will give you a first-rate intellectual challenge. You won't find a more stimulating or distinguished group anywhere. Well, there's something more to it than just the intellectual challenge. The other evening, I forget which channel it was, may have been PBS or Turner Classic Movies, but I turned into the movie Goodbye, Mr. Chips. His most famous movie was made 36, 39. It's the most famous movie ever made about a teacher. And Chips, as he was called, taught at an English boarding school after the turn of the century, and the movie follows his days as a young master to the point where he becomes headmaster and quite along in years. And Chips taught fathers and grandfathers, fathers and children and grandchildren, 3 generations of some families at this English boarding school. And the connections he formed with his students were so incredibly deep. And the most poignant moment in that movie comes when England is engaged in World War I and Chips is announcing in the boarding school chapel the names of his third-generation students who died at the Marne and the Somme. And you say, why are you telling me all this? What does Chips have to do with the University of Virginia Law School? Law school is an awful long way from English boarding school life. Well, yes and no. In one sense, it isn't. It's possible and even desirable, even in a professional school, for close faculty-student bonds to form. And the best teachers, like Chips, seek out those bonds because they know that those friendships are such a critical and important part of the faculty's experience too. And I can tell you that 25 years out from teaching, my students still get in touch with me. They come by when they're in Charlottesville. I see them and hear from many of them regularly. And it's because they and I made an effort not just to have a classroom experience, but as a teacher's point of view, to be a counselor and a friend. So that's the faculty's part of the bargain. Of course, it's not a one-way street. And what's your part of the bargain as well? And as several previous speakers have alluded, your part of the bargain is to be engaged. Now, this is the first day of your law school experience, and everybody starts off engaged. You won't have any problem being engaged these first few weeks. Everybody comes gung-ho. But the true measure of your law school experience is whether you remain engaged past the first semester, past the first set of grades, and into your second and third year. What you get out of it is what you put into it. And you say, Judge, why are you telling me that? That's a cliche. But cliches sometimes become cliches because they happen to be downright true. So as Brian said, throw yourself into your classes, throw yourself into organizations like the Journals and the Law Weekly and the Legal Forum and many others, and give yourself something of yourself back. And remember this, it's okay to love the law. This isn't just supposed to be a grim, grit and grind your teeth experience. In fact, it's kind of cool to love the law. If you actually confess to loving the law, that doesn't make you a nerd. There are times when I get up and start talking with my law clerks and start talking with my colleagues on the court, and there are days when I talk about this legal problem and that legal problem, and I say to myself, I just can't get enough of this stuff. I want to keep on talking about it and thinking about it and seeing if I can't puzzle it out. Believe me, it's really okay to love law. It's marvelously pleasant here in Charlottesville. In about 6 weeks, there's going to be some beautiful fall foliage. First on the Shenandoah Drive and then down in Charlottesville. You're going to wake up one spring morning, most beautiful dogwood and azaleas you've ever saw. There's a softball league, some really good teams. There's a party circuit, formal, informal. My daughters informed me about all of this, when it occurred, when it didn't. It's true that all work and no play will make you very dull, and you should enjoy that. But the point is that having fun doesn't mean dropping out. It really is possible to have fun and at the same time maintain your intellectual edge. In fact, sometimes people with the sharpest intellectual edges are people who aren't afraid to intersperse their work with recreation. To be a successful lawyer, you're going to have to balance those things. So enjoy the pastimes of Charlottesville, but enjoy the intellectual experience equally as much, if not more. You say, well, why? Well, I want to just tell you, read you a little something, and we'll come back around to why. I don't know how many of you saw it, but I was very saddened to read this summer about the death of Michael DeBakey. He died in Houston on July 11th at the age of 99. He's thought by many to be the greatest surgeon who ever lived. And he performed some 60,000 operations on the heart and major arteries during his career and had a hand in the introduction of virtually every significant cardiac procedure now being done. Now, what kind of person was this DeBakey? Was he just a highly specialized tunnel vision sort of guy? Well, in the latest issue of the New Republic, that myth is put to rest. A friend of his, in the medical school at Yale, says the following: my conversations with Dr. DeBakey encompass topics as varied as the history of science, the Industrial Revolution, the origins of theology of Islam and Christianity, the Reformation, the Renaissance, the 18th century background to American democracy, literature, poetry, and a seeming score of other subjects. Nor was there superficial quality to his knowledge. In each area, he proved himself to have mastered massive amounts of information and to be very articulate and expounding on them. And when he went into an operation, it was clear that Dr. DeBakey knew a whole lot more than just cardiology, despite the fact he was probably the world's preeminent cardiologist. And again, his friend writes, like all the best surgeons, DeBakey had a panoramic eye that swept all manner of detail into its field of vision. When that very first sweeping get-acquainted look, which physicians call inspection, was completed on the operating table, he already had important information at his fingertips that he used in forming an all-encompassing impression of the disease process and how best to approach it. There are lots and lots of parallels between medicine and law. And one of the things you'll discern is that the really great lawyers are those who have DeBakey's sort of vision of the field. And this is your one chance to get it. When you get into practice, you're going to have bits and pieces of problems. You're going to have very specialized inquiries. You're going to be asking practical questions for practical solutions. But your one chance to acquire the essential and indispensable DeBakey outlook will be in this law school. It's your one shot at grasping law as an interlocking set of pieces and as a geometric whole. There's only one final note I want to give you. I've talked about law school, and I just want to give you one little brief piece of advice which you might be able to carry with you for the rest of your legal career. And it's ever so simple and uncomplicated, and that is, please be willing, each and every one of you, to risk rejection. In class, that takes the form of risking disagreement. If somebody's going to disagree with you and say you're wrong, that's okay. If you've got a thoughtful point to make, go ahead and make it. You'll have contributed something. And when you're seeking a job, if it's something you really want, go ahead and apply for it, reach for it, even if you're not certain you're going to get it. If you think you want to run for public office down the road, go ahead and do that, even if you're not sure you're going to win. If you want an appointed office in government, give it a shot, even though you may be turned down. Take a case before the jury, even though they may not see it your way. Take the appeal, even if it's not a sure thing. Rejection really hurts. I've had a lot of it in my lifetime. Tell you a little story if you'll promise to do as I say and not as I did. Don't ever do this, okay? It's not recommended. I left law school in the middle of my second year to run for Congress. Dean Mahoney was talking about 25 years old. I would have turned 25 years old right before I was sworn in. I ran, got the Republican nomination. I was running against an incumbent three-term Democrat. It's tough running for Congress when you're 25. People say, what are you doing there? And my opponent had a very pointed way of putting it because there were billboards all around the district that said, send Satterfield back to Congress and Wilkinson back to law school. The voters took up that suggestion with alacrity. It really hurt, given the percentage of votes that I got, to get out of bed the next morning. Have you ever had a hangover when you haven't drunk a thing? That's how it felt. That's how it felt. The rejection really stung. So I was talking to a television cameraman the next day, and he said, how do you feel? I said, I feel great. He said, what do you mean? I said, I've just received a wonderful mandate. And he looked puzzled. You? A mandate? Yeah. I said, I've received a mandate to return to law school. That's where I'm going. I learned an awful lot from defeat. I learned an awful lot about myself. I learned an awful lot about the community in which I ran. All successful lives are strewn with disappointment and rejection. Did you know that the greatest figure of the 20th century, arguably, Winston Churchill, suffered from clinical depression? His years in the 1930s, when he was out of government and was the scapegoat for various British misadventures in World War I, they're called the wilderness years. He was really down. He was really depressed. Did you know that arguably the greatest figure in 19th century American history, Abraham Lincoln, suffered from clinical depression when his generals wouldn't prosecute the war the way he wanted them to, when he lost his race for re-election to Congress? But they were resilient. They kept coming back. And how you deal with rejection will have the most to say about who you are. I tell my kids, I respect you so much more if you're rejected than if you hadn't tried. I had so many conversations with my kids around the dining room table after something had gone wrong. And we'd always end those conversations. I said, never give up on yourself, okay? If you give up on yourself, how can you expect anybody else to believe on you? So be willing to risk rejection. It's a badge of honor, okay? If it's a goal you want and a principle you believe in it, you just go for it. I want to end up where I began. I want to congratulate each and every one of you. I know you're going to have many happy moments here. I associate this law school, both as a student and as a teacher and as a parent, with nothing but happy events and stimulating sessions. It really is a privilege for me to address such a talented group of folks. I know how hard you've worked to get to this point. I know how hard you've worked to get in a law school of this superlative caliber. I know how hard you've worked to be on the threshold of entering one of the world's great professions. So I hope you enjoy the journey, and please do make the most of it. Thank you.